Hello, and welcome to the Capital Gains Show. My name is Aaron, and in this show, I defend capitalism and criticize socialism. Today, I'm going to do another episode of Cool Tweets. This is episode 3. I want to show you a tweet, actually a back and forth of tweets between a couple of people focused around this guy that I've been following on Twitter for a while. I'm a fan of his content. His name is Kurt the Libertarian. Let's get right into it. Here comes the tweet. And first you're going to see Bernie Sanders tweeting, "Healthcare is a human right." He got 389,000 updoots. And then Kurt the Libertarian replies, "So is gun ownership." And someone replies to him, "No one's trying to take your guns, boomer." And then Kurt says, "I'm not worried about people taking my guns. I want the government to pay for my guns." And then someone else replies, "It's the right to be able to own a gun if you want it. It's not the right to be given a gun." Then Kurt comes in with the real kicker here. "Oh, is that how rights work? Then why does everyone say I need to be given health care?" I think that's a great refutation of the whole healthcare as a human right thing. And what Kurt's doing here is he's differentiating between positive rights and negative rights. The capitalists tend to make a distinction between positive rights and negative rights, whereas socialists seem to conflate the two things. They think that it's one and the same. They think that the right to pursue healthcare is the same thing as the right to be given free healthcare, but it's not. It's not the same if it's about healthcare or about sports cars or about music or about guns or about drugs or about anything else. What's going on here is that the libertarian position, the capitalist position, is that people have a right to pursue the acquisition of the things that they want. You have a right to pursue healthcare. You have a right to try to find it, to persuade people to give it to you, to trade for it, that kind of thing. Just like you have a right to pursue guns or candy or music or sports cars or whatever, or clothing or housing. You have a right to pursue those things. You have a right to build and create those things. You have a right to trade for those things. You have a right to sell those things. You don't have a right to compel people to give them to you for free. Now, a negative right is when you have the freedom to pursue something. A positive right is when you have the right to compel people to give things to you. A positive right is when other people have an obligation or a duty to give you stuff for free. That's the difference between a negative right and a positive right. Now, I think everyone, the left and the right, the socialists and the capitalists alike, do agree that negative rights are good and correct, that people have the right to pursue the things they want, trade for the things they want. Where the divergence comes is about the positive rights, of course. Socialists think that certain things, their favorite things, they'll say, oh, it's things that you need. Really, it's just their favorite things, right? They'll say healthcare, housing, food, clothing, education, those kind of things. Those people that there's a positive obligation for others to provide those things to people who want them. The capitalists disagree on that point. They say you can't obligate someone to provide those things to you. You don't have that right to do that to someone, to compel them to give you those resources by force. So here's the thing. If you want to maximize rights for everybody, if you want to maximize freedom for everybody, then you need to support negative rights and you need to oppose positive rights. And I'll tell you why. If everyone has negative rights, then everyone has maximum freedom and liberty. They have individual autonomy, and they are all able to pursue and acquire the things that they want through trade or persuasion or whatever. But when you start getting into the positive right zone, when you start saying that people should be compelled to give health care to others, or people should be compelled to pay taxes to give health care to others, what you're doing at that point is you're reducing the negative rights of someone else. If I compel you to give me $100, then what I've done is I've reduced your negative rights by $100. That's $100 that you're not allowed to use, that, that it's $100 of your own that you're no longer allowed to use to pursue and acquire the things that you want. So for every dollar that you compel out of someone to give you something, what you're doing is you're reducing their freedom, their autonomy, and their sovereignty, by that same amount. Okay, so that's the problem with positive rights. Is the only way you can have positive rights is by reducing the rights of others. It's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, or it's like you're hurting one person to benefit another. It's immoral. It's evil. It's theft. It's no different than me stealing your car. Well, why did you steal my car? You don't have a right to do that. Well, yes, I do. I needed transportation. That's not fair, and it's not correct. It's not moral. And what it does is it leads to a society of poverty and resentment and overall decrease in the quality of life. If you're not going to be secure in your person and in your resources, and people can just take those things from you willy-nilly, or through approval of a committee or whatever it is, then you're not going to try hard to acquire those. You're not going to try as hard to acquire those things in the first place. So what that does is it discourages work, it discourages production, it discourages prosperity, and you're going to end up worse off than the comparative society that does not embrace positive rights and only embraces negative rights. So if you want to maximize prosperity, if you want to maximize initiative, productivity, efficiency, and things of those nature, you need to embrace negative rights and you need to reject positive rights. Of course, everyone has the right to pursue the things they want, to trade for the things they want, to acquire the things that they want, but only through voluntary, consensual means, through persuasion, through peaceful interaction between individuals, through trade, through charity, those kind of things. Compulsion and forcing people to give things to you through taxes or confiscation or theft or whatever, that's how you end up being worse off for society as a whole, and that's how you create resentment and division and distrust and animosity and anger, and you break down human relations when you start making those positive rights. And also, it gets into another slippery slope, because let's say healthcare is a right. You're going to increase demand for it, but you're not doing anything to increase the corresponding supply by declaring healthcare to be a right. If anything, you're going to disincentivize the production of healthcare because you're trying to compel people to do it, and a lot of people are not even going to want to do it. Oh, if I'm not going to get paid for it, I'm not going to provide it. So what happens is, if anything, the supply will remain stagnant or decrease, while making healthcare a human right makes the demand go up. So what that's going to do is that's going to increase the scarcity of healthcare. And here's the problem with that. When you increase the scarcity of the healthcare, it's going to be much more difficult to make healthcare a right and actually fulfill the promise of giving people free healthcare. Let me give you an example in meme form. I love this one. I support free healthcare. There's this obese person. Of course, America is one of the fattest countries in the world. Obese person with an oxygen bottle on her electric scooter, and she's lighting up a smoke. Okay. Now, do you think that the person who treats their body this way does have as much of a right to healthcare as the person who maybe takes good care of their body but needs healthcare? What if someone is healthy and skinny, or physically fit? They don't smoke, they don't drink, but for some unfortunate reason they got some cancer. And then and then right next to them you have this fat obese person on oxygen who was lighting up smokes, eating very poorly, drinking too much, and they also have cancer. And you only have enough healthcare to give cancer treatment to one of those people. Which one are you going to choose? When the healthcare is compelled and it's free, you're probably going to choose to give the healthcare to the healthy person and not to the fat person, right? When the chips are down, when scarcity rears its ugly head, as it does in any economic system, you're going to have to make these kind of triage choices. It's going to be a difficult choice, and you're going to basically, go for the ones that have the best chance of success, the best chance of a successful outcome from the healthcare procedure. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it makes sense to give it to, if you're going to compel healthcare, it makes sense to give it to people that are more deserving. But here's the problem, is that maybe this fat person has, a lot of money to spend, and maybe they could spend it on healthcare on their own. And when the system is free and mandatory and monopolized, this person won't even have the choice of spending extra money to get the healthcare that they otherwise aren't entitled to due to their poor life choices. Okay, so I want to show you something that happened in the United Kingdom with the NHS, the National Health Service. You may or may not know that the National Health Service is a government monopoly on healthcare that the UK uses, among other problems that they have, and there are many. Here's what happened recently. It provoked a lot of fury. I think you might understand why. What happened was the NHS made a ban. They instituted a ban on surgery for smokers and obese people. So it was a policy it was basically a triage policy, like I was just talking about before. They looked at their limited, extremely scarce healthcare resources. They looked at the demand for healthcare, and they decided, not too illogically, honestly, that they were going to save the healthcare surgery resources for people that are not obese and are not smokers. In other words, they're saving the healthcare resources for people that are more likely to survive the procedures, that have better outcome. And that's what triage is. You look at the different people with different cases, and you admit the ones that have a better chance of survival, and you deny the ones that have a worse chance of survival. And the reason you do that is so that the scarce resources you have are going to be more efficiently used and produce better outcomes. And also it's easier, as a healthcare provider, to deal with otherwise healthy people that don't have the additional complications of obesity or smoking or things of that nature. So what happens is the obese people in the UK and the smokers in the UK, they either don't get surgeries at all, which means they don't have a right to healthcare, really, right? You get too fat, you lose your right to healthcare. From the fat person's perspective, that's not very nice, even though they might be treating their body irresponsibly. The fact is that they shouldn't be denied altogether the freedom to pursue healthcare, you see? So it quickly gets into the way of negative rights. The positive right demand quickly interferes with negative rights. And what happens is the smokers and obese people that have enough money in the UK, they can go travel abroad as a healthcare tourist and pay privately out of pocket for healthcare that they're being denied at home. But, that's not necessarily an option for everyone. And of course, the smokers and obese people, they're paying into the NHS. Their taxes are paying into the NHS, whether they're allowed to get healthcare services or not. So essentially, they're a customer that's paying for something, a service that they're not receiving. So why should they be compelled to chip into a system when it's not going to give them that service? So the bottom line is that positive rights cause a lot of complications. They interfere with negative rights. What they cause is really an overall net reduction in freedom and in access to products and services for people. When you start compelling things like that, you're gonna flatline or decrease the supply. You're gonna surge the demand because now you're just guaranteeing it for everyone, and then the guarantee ends up proving to be hollow and shallow and fake. It's an illusion. At least for some people, the more scarce that product or service is that you're guaranteeing, the more illusory it is, the more fake and hollow and shallow it is for customers, especially the customers that are the more difficult cases, like the smokers and the obese people. So anyway, it was a cool tweet. Kurt did a really good job pointing out the difference here. You should have the freedom to pursue these things. You should have the freedom to pursue healthcare, guns, music, money, cars, but none of these things should be compelled to be given into your hands. You should, because you're just going to make things worse. You're going to ruin the economy of that product or service, and you're going to have a lot of unsatisfied people. And in case you didn't know, the NHS, I'll save most of it for another video, but really the NHS has a lot of unsatisfied customers. Not only the fatties and the smokers that were denied healthcare, but even the physically fit people. The NHS provides some of the worst cancer and heart attack survival rates in the developed world. world, far worse than the U.S. It's a very hollow, very shallow guarantee of healthcare. Meanwhile, Americans in the U.S. system, for all its fault, for all its expenses, they have more access to care. Even if they can't afford it, they still get the care. You go into medical debt. It's better to be in debt than be dead from lack of getting any care whatsoever. America has the best hospitals in the world. They're private hospitals. It has the best cancer care in the world. It's private cancer care, because the healthcare, more or less in America, is more of a negative right than a positive right. Of course, there's a lot of government spending and a lot of government mandates in the healthcare industry in America, but relatively speaking, compared to the NHS, where everything is a total government mandate, the U.S. system absolutely outperforms the NHS on just about every single front except for cost. So the proof is in the pudding. You not only do you have the correct morality when you look at negative rights and embrace those and reject the positive rights, but the economic systems that are based more on negative rights rather than positive rights are outperforming the systems that are based more on positive rights than negative rights. So that's what you should expect to see when you have something that's more logically correct and more morally correct. It is going to produce superior real-world results to the positive right counterparts. You're gonna get better performance, better service, more satisfied customers. Anyway, thanks for watching.